Welcome to the Most Powerful Life monthly educational series. I'm Marlene McCallum, professional coach and founder of Most Powerful Life. This month, it's my privilege to introduce to you Janet Shizzle, certified professional organizer and owner of Basic Organization. Janet has served as the president of the Washington, D.C. chapter of NAPO, the National Association of Professional Organizers. She's also a member of the Institute for Challenging Disorganization and the Association of Interior Design Professionals. She's going to be speaking to us today on the topic of getting organized. It's not about the stuff. I can't wait to hear what it is about. And before I turn it over to Janet, I just want to let you know some basic instructions for today's webinar. Please note the question and chat features on your control panel. Janet will be asking for questions and sharing throughout the presentation, but if at any time you'd like to send a comment or a question, I will be fielding those as well. So now it's my privilege to turn today's presentation over to our featured speaker, Janet, joining us from the Northern Virginia area today. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you, Marlene, and thank you everyone for attending. I'm looking forward to this hour of speaking to you and hopefully making you, helping you to move forward on whatever it is your organizing challenge is. Marlene is sending out an email with instructions for the phone consultations, so I would like you to keep those in mind also as we are working through today's webinar. I want to thank you all for sending in your, when you registered, your response to my question on what your biggest organizing challenge is. I noticed that a lot of people are challenged with paper, and that's not unusual, so I will be doing a little bit of focusing on paper today, but everything we talk about can be used to focus on any area of your house that you want to organize, whether it's closets or your children's toys or the kitchen. It doesn't really matter. So as we're talking, I would like you to focus on one area of your house you want to work on and try to relate everything that we discussed today to that one area. It's really futile to think you're going to organize your entire house at one time. You want to really focus on one area at a time, and so while we're talking today, really put in your mind what area you would like to work on. Usually when I meet with a new client, I ask them, what is the most challenging area in your house? What's bothering you the most? Because, boy, wouldn't it be a relief if you could really work in that area and then have that not be an issue for you anymore. And as Marlene said, I will ask for sharing opportunities for people so we can have a little bit of back and forth and some feedback today, but your opportunity that you'll have with the phone consultation will be to really, you and I can discuss your personal challenge. So let's start the presentation. I named this presentation, Get It Organized, It's Not About the Stuff, because that is really my first big learning lesson when I became a professional organizer. It's never about the stuff. The stuff is the peripheral, it's the visual of the disorganization. And so we're going to talk about how you can focus on whatever your issue is and then attack the clutter. So it's really about setting goals for what you want to do in each individual space in your home and what is important to you and how you want to live your life. So as an example, let me just say a lot of times I see this in people's home offices. Unless you're really young, you're probably the first generation that had a home office in your house. And so we're doing the learning here. People are using their home office for many hours a day. You may even run a business out of this home office, but you haven't really concentrated on what you're using the space for. Is it just to create a business, or are you using it for other things? So you need to be really specific about what you want to use the space for. But that can also go along with your living room. Do you want to play board games with your kids in the living room? Do you want to watch TV in the living room? Do you want to have a craft table in your living room? Do you want to have a reading area? So you really need to ask yourself, what do I want to use this space for? And it's whatever is important to you and how you live your life. And it will just allow you to make decisions, because anything that it doesn't go along with how you want to use that space then has to be moved out of the space. So let's move on. Another thing is, getting organized is hard work. It can be very emotional, and it's quite time consuming, and it is social. Now, what I mean about this is, we've been fooled into thinking that you can get organized very quickly by watching all these cable TV shows. And it just doesn't work that way. Usually I will ask a client who seems to be frustrated with the pace of the work, how long has it been like this? And sometimes they may answer with, a number of years it's been that way. So it's really impossible to think that the situation can change in a day if it's been like this for 6 years. But it's also a matter of the hard work is retraining yourself with different habits in order for you to keep your space the way you want it. I see a lot of emotional reaction with clients too. It's kind of interesting. People don't realize that you have a connection with everything that's in your house. It could be a very strong emotional connection, but it also can be very minor. But if you are a very emotional person, the work could be very emotional. And then let's talk. I mentioned the time consuming. So let me mention the social aspect. It's been found that organizing is, for most people, a social activity. People don't like to do it themselves. So you can really easily talk yourself into not doing it if you're standing alone in a room that you think it's a mountain of work. So if you can, get someone to assist you. Usually it's better if it's not a family member or not someone who lives in the home, because you need them to be just your support and non-judgmental about any decisions that you're making in the space. Today we're going to talk about setting your goals for the area you want to work on, the excuses that you might make, and then how I'd like to suggest you make decisions, and then we'll also talk about the organizing process. One thing about making decisions, it's been said that clutter is just unmade decisions. And if you think about the space that you want to make a change in right now, really think about the individual objects that are there. Are they something that you just put down on a horizontal surface and said, I'll think about that later, I'll decide about that later? And this the whole process of delaying that decision, that becomes the clutter in your space. So first we're going to talk about setting your goals. Again, think of one space in your home that you would like to make a change in. What do you want to do in that space? Be very clear on what you'd like to do. And if you don't share the space, then be really selfish, really, about what you want to do in that space. If it's your space alone, then let's keep it that way and let's make it exactly how you want. Every person is different and individual, and so it's whatever goes for you. Because if you don't enjoy the space, it's not going to work for you. The second thing is you need to get ready to let things go. So things that are in the space that are not supporting your goal need to be moved to another area. A lot of times, again, in a home office, I see pockets of clutter that people have put there to say, I'll deal with that later, and you put it in the office. But eventually, when you're walking to your office every day, you don't have the goal of, yeah, I'm gonna get through that pile of stuff. you are there to do some work, to be productive, and that's the last thing you want to do. So eventually the piles grow, and you think, it plays with your mind, and your office is a mess, and it's a bunch of stuff that doesn't have anything to do with the work you want to do in the space. But it can be the same way in a closet. Um, if you'd like to organize a closet, everything needs to be something that fits and that you love, because why put anything else in there? A closet is to store clothes and shoes and accessories. So I've been in enough closets that have scrapbooks and photos and odds and ends that they don't have enough space for their clothes. So as soon as you take out what doesn't belong, then you can start to focus on what you want the space to be. And you cannot allow any excuses. And this is one place where it really works to have someone there supporting you, working alongside you, because they can point out when they hear an excuse. Something like, oh, it'll just be fine in the corner. I'll deal with it later. I don't really want to think about it now. The purpose in really sitting down and organizing your space is to make a change, and doing something like that isn't going to get you to change. So I'd like to stop right now, and talk about and ask people to type in what their goals might be that they're focused on, and what space you're thinking of, and how you would want to change it. So if anybody would like to do that, and then we'll just talk about it. I always have one thing in my house I'm working on. Again, to think you're going to organize your whole house is just too much. Just focus on one thing. So whether it's I really want to get the kitchen counters cleared off and keep them that way, how can I do that? And because again, it's clearing them away and then keeping it up, maintaining it, learning the habit of keeping it the way you want. So one thing at a time.
We have some
Marlene,
sharing coming through.
Call in?
Yes, we have some sharing. Carrie says she's focused on her closet. Thanks, Carrie. And I think I have another. Anine is here, and she says her goal is to make her desk a productive space.
Okay. Okay, well, Anine, I'm going to talk a little bit about your organizing style later, which may really help you with your desktop, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Carrie, you want to focus on your closet. So picture your closet and point out the things in your closet that maybe don't belong there. And then, because, let's be realistic in that the closet is really prime real estate for storage. It's something you go to several times a day probably. So you want to make it, how do you want to make it work for you? I often hear clients that after we've organized their clothes closet, they will talk about how, wow, I just feel so much better in the morning because there is no struggle with going in and picking out something to wear. It actually makes me happy to do it. So really, what do you want to get out of your organized closet? And then you work towards that goal. Anine, it was your desktop that you want to do. So again, it depends on kind of your organizing style, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But it's however you work best. And you might want to think back to when you were a student and which classes you worked best in. Was that teacher very organized and very regimented and had a clear, clean chalkboard and ready to go every day? Or were they more of a visual person, and did you like that there was a lot going on in the room, that kind of thing? Every once in a while we'll have a teacher who's a pack rat and there's just so much stuff. And a lot of times very creative people are seen sometimes as pack rats because they see a possibility in everything. And if you have a lot of stuff on your desk that you see a possibility in every single item, then that may be something that really charges your creativity. So again, be really clear about the way you want to use your desk. Anyone else? Okay,
Yes.
let's go ahead and
Oh,
move on.
I do
I'm
have
going
a
to
couple
talk about
more.
the oh,
I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
there's a little delay
Oh,
with the
okay.
sound. Let's see. We have Angela is also working on her desk and office, and Melissa said her garage. So that's a game changer there, the garage.
Mm-hmm.
And and, and Joran is here, and she's said this is excellent. She's taking notes.
Okay, good. Notes are good. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the desktop. So Angela, again, just take into mind what I had already said. Melissa, garage is a great example. People often delay decisions by putting things in a garage, also in a basement. It's just way too easy. It's way too, it's out of your living space. You don't have to look at it anymore. But, all of a sudden one day you'll open the garage door and think, oh my, what happened here? There's two, and it's, you'll start a project in the garage, so you'll stop putting your car in, and then before you know it, you can't fit the car in at all anymore because the floor is full. So that's a garage, and garages and basements is where I see this slow progression of adding stuff and delaying decisions for years and years and years. So again, for a garage, for most people, they can have a pretty clear goal. I want to park my car in the garage. I want to create a workshop. I want to create an exercise area, whatever it is. Now that doesn't mean that if you want an exercise area, that everything in the garage has got to go that's garage material, because you can probably create an exercise area in a portion of your garage. But again, think, what is the purpose of my garage? What do I want to use it for? And maybe you don't want to park a car in there. So that gives you the leeway of having more space for something else. But as soon as you have a space that's just a free-for-all, then that's what it becomes. You have to have a clear goal of what that space is used for. So, okay, well, let's go ahead and move on. We're going to talk about the excuses that people use. And these 5 excuses I hear time and time again. As I'm working with the client, we talk our way through the entire day. The process is not quiet. So I will hear this from clients, the different excuses, but if you're working alone, it's really easy to just kind of have it in one ear, out the other ear. You don't say it out loud to yourself, so nobody can catch you on this excuse. And I mean, everyone does this. I do this myself. You just don't. You have this funny feeling. I might need this, so I'll hang on to it. Oh gosh, I paid a lot of money for this, so I don't, I feel bad, getting rid of it. So these are the 5 excuses. I might need it. It was a gift. It was free. It was expensive, and it has memories. And all of these, if you think about it, have something to do with a more negative emotion. So I might need it is related to fear of needing whatever that item is and not having it. And having it was a gift, and that it was expensive could be related to the fear of guilt. I mean the emotion of guilt. Someone gave you something, you love that person, and you don't want to have this bad feeling because you've given it away. Oftentimes people will buy something expensive and they feel like they haven't gotten their use out of it. And so they hate to let something go even though they don't have a purpose for it anymore. So the one I struggle with the most is that it has memories. Everybody has memorabilia that they like to keep. That's important to them. It's part of their life. I never push a client to get rid of memorabilia, but you want to honor it. You want to store it correctly. You want to put it out on a shelf, possibly, but it could go in a box in your basement as well. but that's where you have the strong emotional attachment to that stuff, that tugs at your heartstrings when you're trying to make these decisions. But you really have to think about, with all of these excuses, is what is it costing you to make these excuses? For every item that you keep somewhere in your house, you had to usually pay for it, unless it was free. You have to clean it. You have to move it around. You have to insure it. Unfortunately, I've talked to lots of people who say, well, we're going to sell our house because I need a bigger house. I just can't fit into what I have now. So really, at the extreme, you can be, having pay a larger rent or mortgage payment for a larger house just to hold your stuff. And also, there's a statistic out there about the billion-dollar business that the self-storage industry is, and that those are people who have, in my opinion, kind of gone to the extreme where they pay money to store their stuff someplace else where they never see it. So if you are that type of person, then you really need to think about what you're doing, what you're paying for. So one other thing I would like to talk about in this segment is the 80-20 rule, if anyone's ever heard of it. The 80-20 rule really basically says we use 20% of our stuff 80% of the time. So Melissa, when you were thinking about your garage, or Angela and Arlene were thinking about their desktop, and Carrie about the closet, you use 20% of what's in that space 80% of the time. And everyone, that's just human nature. Everyone has favorites. So if you're in your kitchen and you need a frying pan, you probably have a favorite frying pan that you pull out most of the time and use. And it doesn't mean it should be the only frying pan you have, but just be clear that you're using a majority of your stuff. A small minority of your stuff a majority of the time. So, Carrie, when you're working in your closet, be really, you pull everything out and then pick your favorites and put them right back in. There's no question. You got to keep those favorites. That 20%, definitely. The other 80%, you have to think about, how often do I use this? So, again, I'd like to open it up for sharing and ask people, which excuse do you think you use most, and where do you think you could apply that 80-20 rule with the space that you want to work in? So while we're waiting, I think I started. My biggest excuse, it has to do with the memories. I'm the type of person that I don't mind getting rid of things. That's pretty easy for me until I go down to my basement and start looking in those boxes that, I've collected my children's artwork and school photos and that kind of thing. I have a really hard time with that because those memories just all confront me at once. So, but everyone has these issues. So does anybody want to share?
Yes, we have Carrie's graciously shared with us. She says, I find myself thinking one of these days I may need this, blank, whatever this is. And that's Carrie. And then Melissa said, I might need it, and it has memories on my two. Mm-hmm. And gosh, if I were to say for me, it's I can recognize a little bit of all of them. My husband is definitely I might need it. Mm-hmm. Don't get rid of it. I might need it. And I guess it has memories if I had to choose one.
Right. Memories are hard. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about I might need it, a kind of idea. We are, probably everyone on the call, we live in a consumer-driven society, and we acquire more than we need. I think probably everybody could agree that they have stuff in their home or at work that is not necessary. And that's where you struggle. If it's necessary, then there's no question. Find a home for it and you use it. So when I say I might need it, ask yourself, if I got rid of this, what would happen if I needed one? what would I do? When I ask clients that, usually their response is, well, I'd go up to the store and buy another one. I'm like, okay, and then you really need to focus on an object. So let's each think about maybe one object in their house. Now, if it's a piece of paper, a statement of some kind, or has some information on it for you. If you needed that information, could you find it somewhere else? That if you got rid of the piece of paper, so could you look it up on the internet? Could you, if you needed your electric bill from 6 months ago, could you call your electric company, or could you go onto their website and sign into your account and find it? There's only certain kinds of paper that you need to keep for an extended period of time. Most paper becomes obsolete fairly quickly. Again, but it could be a cooking utensil. I might need this. I never use it, but I might need it one day. Okay? It's an unusual cooking utensil that you never use. So could you substitute something else if you needed whatever this special item does? Is there something you could substitute? If it isn't, could you go up to Walmart and purchase another one? And is it worth you using up the prime real estate space in the one kitchen drawer where you keep your utensils to have something that you don't ever use? So that's what you keep when you think I might need it one day. Think, when was the last time I used this? Wow, I haven't used it in over a year. If I got rid of it, what would I do if I needed it? And if the answer is reasonable, then you could get rid of it. And sometimes people hesitate with making those final decisions like that. I often suggest that you put things in a cardboard box, you write the date on the cardboard box, you put it in an out-of-the-way place, and see if you actually needed it in the 6 months. And then at the end of the 6 months, get rid of the box. Because you haven't needed anything in there for 6 months. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about making decisions. So you're ready to get down and dirty. You're not going to make any excuses anymore. You have those 5 excuses in your head. You're not going to use those. You're not going to allow them to be part of your process. And so to make the decisions on items, you need to touch everything. It needs to be a one thing at a time decision. So when you're looking at a pile of paper on your desk, that might look kind of overwhelming, but the decisions can be made really, really quickly. When you're looking in a closet full of clothes, the same thing. You might look, wow, I have hundreds of pieces of clothing that I have to go through. But ask yourself the 2 questions: do I love it or do I use it? And if the answer is no to both of those, then it's certainly not part of your 20% that you use 80% of the time. So if you love it, you keep it, and if you use it, if it's utilitarian and it's not pretty, and but you use it, then you go ahead and keep it. So when you're dealing with paper, probably very little paper you love, but is it of use to you? Do you need it? Can you get the information somewhere else? And that's an easy way to decide, like, no, I don't need it, I don't need it, I don't need it. So you can quickly sort through it. I love it, yes, I use that, yes, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. You're going to end up with really, if you're sitting with a pile of paper, you're going to end up with 2 piles, stuff you don't need and stuff you need. And that's the way to kind of quickly start the process and not make it so overwhelming. There's a quote by William Morris that is passed around on the internet all the time, to just so you know that people have always struggled with this. But he said, have nothing in your house that you do not know to be useful or to believe to be beautiful. So, through time, people have dealt with, should I keep this? Should I keep this? Should I keep this? And then let's talk a little bit more about that. The reason you have a hard time making the decisions is, again, let's go back to your emotional attachment with items. So Carrie, who was thinking about her closet, You know, people will keep things in their closet that used to fit them, and it doesn't serve their purpose anything other than reminding them that they can't fit into it anymore. So I'll often let clients like keep those things. That's their goal. They want to lose some weight. That's their goal. They want to get back into those clothes. That's great, but let's box up those clothes and let's get them out of the prime real estate of your closet, and let's move them down into your basement or into some storage area, so that when you reach your goal, you can have that fun afternoon of pulling that stuff out and putting it on, and also getting rid of the stuff that is too big for you anymore in your closet. So Carrie, when you're working in your closet, everything has got to be something that you would wear right now. Everything, and that makes just life easier when you're working in your closet. Okay, so let's move on. Also, in making decisions, let's talk about organizing styles. So I have 4 styles here, and you may recognize yourself in one of these, and you may also say, well, wow, I'm a little bit of a pack rat, but I also don't like anything out on my kitchen counter. You could be all 4 in different areas of your home, or maybe now you're an everything out person, but when you were a kid, you were more of a pack rat. So people change, things change, and the way you use each space in your house might make the difference. So an everything out person is somebody who uses the visual clues of having things out to remind them to do things. I'm a very visual person, and I have little piles of stuff, but I want to say I'm organized about it because I have a purpose to why I make that pile where it is, whether the pile is on my desk at work, or whether that pile is on my kitchen counter, or whether like I leave my house through my garage, so there might be a pile right next to the garage door for myself. So, but an everything out person can, they need that visual clue to remind them to do something. Writing it down on a to-do list or something doesn't always work for them. They need this stuff out. But when I work with a client that's an everything out, we always try to be very strategic about where those clues or where you're going to put that stuff, where that's going to be your visual reminder, because it doesn't do you any good to have something you want to return to a store up tucked in a corner in your bedroom when you forget it every time you're walking out the door. So the return pile needs to be near the door you're going to leave the house, or maybe even better yet, it needs to be in your that item in my trunk so I can. A
Janet,
lot of people.
Janet, hi. You cut out a little bit the last 3 sentences. Could you go
Oh,
back?
okay. What did
At
I
least
say?
you cut out for me, but I'd rather have you repeat it for folks. People are like
Okay.
sending in comments left and right. Like, I just want to share with you, Michelle,
Okay.
who's here. She said Janet has wonderful little sound bites that'll come in handy to recall when trying to attack the mess. And I just have to say that's been my experience also. I have your voice in my head now.
Okay.
When I go. So people are really getting a lot out
I'll
of
be
this.
sitting on your shoulder.
No, like the sweet little good angel sitting on the shoulder. Okay, so if you could just backtrack a little bit for
Okay.
us, that would be
So
great.
I think I was at the end. I was saying, an everything out person needs those visual reminders, but they need to be put strategically placed so it reminds you at the right time. So the example I gave is, if you need to return something to a store, it doesn't do you any good to have it in a corner in your bedroom that doesn't visually remind you when you're on your way out the door. If we would set up an area near your door that you leave from to say, okay, these are the things that need to be returned. Whether they're something you bought at a store, you need to bring back to a friend, or library books, or whatever. And then I go even one step further with myself, is I will oftentimes put them in my car. because when I'm out and about, I'll realize like, wow, I'm at this shopping center, that I can return this. This store is at this shopping center, so here I go. I've got the item when it's time. So my next organizing style that I'd like to talk about is nothing out, and I am somewhat a nothing out person. That doesn't mean a nothing out person is really organized. It means that you just work better with the clear space. I've recognized that I was always like this as a child. I was somebody who just needed the space. I couldn't pile things up even when I was doing some kind of art project or anything. I couldn't have it all spread out. But that was just how, I realize now, like that was my style, and that's how I work best. So I am somebody who tends to, spread out at my desk, but then when I've finished, before I get up and walk away, I have to clean it up. I have to put it all away, because for me to come back to my desk and have it all spread out, it doesn't work for me. So it really is somebody who just prefers clear spaces. Do you walk into your kitchen in the evening to prepare dinner and think, okay, I have to clean up first, and then I can start what I'm doing? Then you're a nothing out person. A right angler is somebody who has the appearance of being precise. So they may have clean kitchen counters, but the kitchen cabinets are not organized. Again, they might be somewhat a nothing out person. They like the clear surface, but they still have a lot of stuff that's not in any organized fashion. And I often, well, I'll tell you a quick story. When I meet a new client, I go to their home and I do an assessment, and we walk through their house. Usually people will start with the nicer, looking areas of their house, and I'm always wondering, like, okay, when am I gonna see the clutter? When am I gonna see the disorganization? And they may take me back into a guest room they don't use very often, or their closet. A lot of times it's their garage or their basement, and that's where I see it. So appearance-wise, they're quite organized. They look like, they appear to be very organized, but there is an area in their life that's very disorganized, and it's, for some people, it's gotten to the point where the clutter in the basement is really affecting a large part of their life. And so that's when we start working, and we get down into the basement, and it makes a huge difference to that appearance that they have in the rest of their house. They now can feel in the space that's been bothering them the most. So the last organizing style that I want to talk about is really the pack rat. Again, a pack rat doesn't have to be somebody who's disorganized. It's just somebody who has everything out. That you're afraid to file something in a file cabinet because you think you'll never find it again, or you prefer, your clothes out or up on like on a bookcase type of thing, so you can see it all instead of having put away in drawers. But I see a lot of pack rats that don't have issues in certain areas of their house. It seems to affect them most in a home office or an office situation, because there is so much paper and there is so much movement of the paper. You deal with it, and then what do you do with it? And then you deal with that piece of paper, and then you might need it again. So what do you do with it? So to work, if you have a pack rat style, we have to figure out what's going to work for you to keep you comfortable and in your space. We don't set up rules that say you have to put it away, you have to file the paper, but there's lots of tips and tricks that you can use to work with your organizing style. So I'd like to ask if anybody can identify themselves as one style or another, or more of one style. If anybody would like to share that.
Just giving folks a minute here. Oh, let's see.
Okay.
Melissa says she can relate to all of them, but mostly the pack rat. And Pat says everything out. She's in everything
Okay.
out.
Pat says that.
And let me check in with Anine. She was having some sound
Oh,
issues.
okay.
Although the sound has cleared up on my end, it's been sounding fine. I think she said it was okay now. Anyone else want to send in your, as best you can relate to, which organizing style you are? Where do you hear yourself the most? Let's see, I think we have another. Oh, Joran says I'm a nothing out / right angler. Oh, listen to this. Living with pack rats, everything out. Help. That's great.
One of the biggest challenges I see is I mean, I have clients who live alone, definitely, but one of the biggest challenges is that everybody is different, and if you're living in a house with, more than one person, then everybody's going to have a different organizing style. So, yeah, I often when I talk to groups, I tell them eventually, like, oh, I'm really picking on my husband. And he's not, he's not in any way like over the top or anything, but he just has a different organizing style than I do. And so I can totally relate that we have to find ways where there's can be a happy median in certain spaces. We've also worked with kind of this is my space and this is your space. And so you do whatever you want in your space and I'm not going to say anything about it. But this is my space, so don't touch my space. And that and it's worked well for us, but it again is different for everyone. It's different lifestyle, different number of people in the house, or who you're caring for, ages of children, and everything. So that's really where we work one-on-one to try to tailor the solution for every client.
We have some more great feedback.
Oh, okay.
Just very quickly, Angela says she's identified pack rat in her home office situation, and that's the area that she's focused on for the webinar. So she's identified that. Itana says, I'm mostly everything out and pack rat, but she wants to be everything in.
Okay.
And Anine says, as far as she can tell, everything out. She's in everything out, but she wanted to know if she could have a quick recap of the right angler, just real quick, because I think that was where she cut out.
Sure.
Thanks.
The right angler is someone who has the appearance of precision. So they do a really good job of like stuffing things away. So their desktop may be nice and neat and work well for them, but they have a file system for their paperwork that just is not working. They can't find as I said, their desktop may be fine, but if you ask them for a document of some kind, they can't find it, or it takes them a long time to find it. There's a statistic out there that the average American spends 55 minutes a day looking for things that they know they own, but they can't find them. And when I talk to business groups, I can equate that with, okay, 55 minutes a day, so your workers are at work half of that time, so they are using almost 30 minutes a day at work looking for items that they can't find, and it's usually paper. Well, I want to say it's paper, or it's documents that have been filed, electronic documents that have been filed. So for business owners, that makes a huge difference if they think about, wow, every employee wastes a half an hour a day, the average employee. So that, wow, I could be a lot more productive in my business if we could figure out how to organize, our paper flow, our electronic management, document management, that kind of thing. So it's something that you really, if you focus on, you can really make a big change on. So I see that I have about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to start going through the process here of organizing. So this is where we start to really take action. When you walk into your space and you're ready to go, what I would suggest is you put aside an amount of time, and that's up to you. But maybe you're going to work for an hour or 2 hours on a space. Maybe that's too overwhelming for you and you want to just try to do 30 minutes. That's fine. And often people say, where do I get started? And it doesn't matter. What bothers you most? So if you're working in your home office, if your desktop is what bothers you most, okay, I'm going to focus on my desktop. I'm not going to worry about the bookcases or the file cabinet or anything right now. I'm just going to do the desktop. Because you will get such a sense of achievement when you have finished that area. And it's doable in a certain amount of time. So let's go through the process. The first thing you need to do is sort whatever your focus is. So if it's your desktop, you need to put like items together. So the picture on here is actually when I decided one day to organize my pantry. As you see, I pulled everything out of the pantry. Now I wanted to wipe down the shelves and all of that, so it was necessary for me to pull everything out. A lot of times when you're working on a project, it's going to look a little worse before it starts to look better, because you need to pull it all out. Then you're going to, again, try to not get overwhelmed. Make it really kind of quick and simple. I've got a list of 4 things, 4 categories that you're going to look at every item and you're going to say, okay, this is a keep, a giveaway, a toss or recycle, and a maybe. So every piece of paper on your desktop, every item in your pantry, every piece of clothing in your closet. Do I want to keep it? Do I want to give it away? Is it not worth giving away? I'm going to toss it. Or I'm not sure. And in my experience, 90% you're going to be able to make that decision whether you keep it, give it away, or you need to toss or recycle it. That 10% that are the maybes. So go ahead and give yourself that. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure, I don't, but once you get going, you're going to be able to say, I need to keep this. No, I don't need this anymore. Oh, this is nice enough, let's send it to charity. You're going to be able to do that with 90% of the items. So give yourself a break with that 10%. And maybe once you've gone through the process, you can take a break. On another day, focus on that 10% of maybes. If you still have the energy, you can go back and do it. But that last 10% is the hardest part. So you give yourself a pat on the back. You've gotten through 90% of this project. Pat yourself on the back for that. So that's the first thing in sorting your items. That's the first step in the process. The second step is you're going to look at the piles you have created, and the ones you're going to keep. Good. We're going to work on those in a minute. The stuff you're going to give away is your purge portion. So you either are going to say, well, I'm going to donate this to charity, or it's trash or paper. You can recycle or shred the paper. A lot of people want to sell items, which always comes with a little suggestion from me. Selling items is another project all in itself. So really be clear with yourself on whether you're going to do it or not, because that sell pile could sit for another 6 months and you won't move forward with it. So really, decide whether, if your goal is more, I need to be more productive, I need to get this area in shape, I'm not going to spend the time to sell it, I just want to let go of these items. If you want to sell it, then there's certainly, you don't have to do it on your own. There are companies that will sell on Craigslist and eBay and stuff for you. And then there's always the stuff that, oh, this belongs to my neighbor, I want to give this to my husband, gosh, this, if you have kids in the house, there's always we always create piles of like, okay, this is for your son, this is for your daughter, this is for your husband, this is for you, this is, and it just needs, when I say purge, for that stuff, it doesn't mean we're going to throw it away or we're going to get rid of it. It just needs to go to somewhere else in the house. So you've, it doesn't have anything to do with how productive you want to be in your office. It doesn't have anything to do with you being able to cook dinner 5 nights a week for your family in the kitchen. It doesn't have anything to do with the clothes in your closet, so it just needs to go somewhere else. The next step in the process is to assign a home for these items. So when you're working and you say, oh, this stuff is for my son, okay, where does it belong? Does it belong in his bedroom, or does he need to take it to school? Does it belong in the basement? Maybe it's memorabilia for your son, so maybe it needs to go into the basement. So you're going to assign a home for those items, and the ones that need to leave the space you're working in needs to go. So you can have a little field trip through your house and deliver those items to the rooms they belong in. But then you're going to go back to the space you're working in, and you're going to start to do that with what you're working on. So let's picture that you're in your home office and you've sorted through the items on your desktop. So you're going to have paper, and where does that belong? Okay, do you use a file cabinet, or do you store your paper in some other fashion? So that's one thing. Where does it belong in the room? Where are you going to use it? Maybe you have some office supplies that have been sitting on your desk, okay, but you want to get them off your desk. Okay, where is going to be the home for the pencils and pens and scissors and tape? And where's going to be the home for the reams of printer paper that I don't need yet? Where is going to be the home for these reference books that I use every once in a while, or these books that I've read but I want to keep them in here in the office, but I'm not reading them right now. I'm probably never going to read them again. So you assign homes for those items. Oftentimes I find this is where we discuss with clients the storage possibilities in the space. People who want to keep a lot of books but don't have a bookcase to put them in. So we figure out the size of the bookcase that they would need in order to keep that many. And this is where we use what we call the target principle, and you may use this in other areas of your life as well. What you use most often needs to be closest to you. What you use least often can be further out in a target because you don't need them as often. So again, if you're sitting at your desk, the stuff on your desk needs to be the items you use all the time, every day. The drawers that are in your desk, that's where you can put the office supplies that you may need most often, or if you have file drawers in your desk, those are where your current ongoing paperwork is, or your client information, things you use all the time. But how about those, archive files, the old tax returns? I often see the old tax returns filling up an entire drawer in a file cabinet, which then means that my client has no space to put their current file paperwork. So those old tax returns can be boxed up and put down in the basement. Quick and simple, they've gained a whole file drawer that they can now start using with current paperwork and stuff that they're using. So we've moved the tax paperwork to far out in the target, someplace that you'd have to make an effort to go get to, but you probably don't need to go look at them very often or ever. And so oftentimes you just want to make it as easy as possible. So if you're in your kitchen, the knives, the cooking utensils, the stuff you use most often should be the stuff that's sitting on your kitchen counter. The small appliance that if you make coffee every morning, then your coffee maker should be out on the counter. But if you don't use your mixer every day, then if you don't have the space, it needs to go somewhere else. It needs to stay off the counter so that you have the space to work. So that's where you would, when you're standing at your kitchen counter, the counter is the most prime real estate, and then your secondary real estate is the drawer right underneath the counter and the bottom shelf of your upper kitchen cabinet. And that's probably where you put the dishes and the glasses that you use most often. But then you keep moving up the kitchen cabinet, and the top shelf on your top cabinet is where you put the fancy stuff that you use a couple times a year maybe, or the odds and ends that you don't use very often. So that's how you use the target principle, and you can use that in every space in your home. Okay, then now we're going to talk about containing these items. So along with assigning homes, a lot of times people you need to create a home for everything you're keeping. You need to create a home. So you've sorted into small categories. So you have in your desk, it may be you have pencils and pens. That's one category. Okay, where are you going to keep them? So this is a lovely picture of, I think it's an aisle at Target, where they sell bins of all shapes and sizes and colors. This is the mistake that most people make. This is the fourth step in the process, is buying a container. And if you go to Target or Walmart or gosh, please, just about any place on January 1st, the first thing you see when you walk in the door is bins, because people have decided that they are going, this is their big, their New Year's resolution, they're going to get organized. They go and buy bins, they go home, they pile all the stuff in bins, and they stack the bins up. Oh, they're organized, but they're really not. They haven't eliminated everything. If they can't find what they're looking for because it's all stuffed in the bins, they're no more organized than they were before. So that's containing your items is the fourth step in the process. And the last step is maintaining. The key to success once your space is organized is you've got to put things away. So when you're organizing, everything has a home, everything finds a home, and then you have to maintain that by putting things back in their home after you're using them. So what you really want to think about is making things at the ready to be used. And again, if you are living with more than just yourself in your house, you think about, I need to put that away so someone else can find it. Where would the whole family be looking for the scissors? Where would the whole family be looking for this paperwork? And that's how you continue to just make it ready for everyone, including yourself, to find, to use again. So we have just a few minutes left. If anybody has any questions.
Yes, we have, let's
That
see.
is the
Okay, can we take a couple questions?
Sure.
Okay, so Pat asks, what do you use if not containers?
If not containers, boy, we are very creative. We use just about anything. I actually find that most of my clients have enough supplies, and we use what they have. But oftentimes people will use Ziploc bags for certain type. It just depends on what you're organizing. But it's kind of be creative with what's out there. I will often use a silverware divider that holds like forks and spoons and knives. I'll put that in a drawer in the bathroom and put toothbrushes and toothpaste or makeup in it or something like that. But bins come in all, I mean, when I say bins, I mean cardboard boxes, just containers of any kind at all. But you can also, it doesn't have to be on a bin. The home for books can be a shelf on a bookcase. Your vacuum cleaner needs to have a home, and it's in a closet or it's in your laundry room, wherever that home is. That doesn't need an actual container. You just assign a home to it. A file cabinet is another one. Your file folder is the container that paperwork is in.
I have a hot burning question, and you have 1 minute and 10 seconds to answer it. Okay. Okay, so this is in regards to the maybes and miscellaneous. The maybes, which I heard you say, are usually the last 10% and the hardest. So Itana asks, what about the maybes and miscellaneous? I think she's looking for any guidance here. She says, I can't make that decision, and she has bins of them. So what do you say to those folks?
Okay. Well, open up those bins and revisit them, because they may, if they've been around a while, some of those maybes may not be maybes anymore. You may be able to get rid of it because your lifestyle has changed, or the paperwork is no longer necessary or anything. But that's where it really helps to have the assistance of working with somebody else to really bounce what you're feeling off of someone else and deciding about that. But that's probably, thank you for that question, because it's like the gist of everything I've been talking about. That last 10%, those maybes, are where you're going to make excuses or where you're going to be emotionally attached to the items. That's why it's the hardest part. So again, give yourself maybe a very small time frame in dealing with that, because it may be emotionally harder. Um, Go in for 15 minutes and say, okay, and I'm going to put a timer on, and we're going to work at this for 15 minutes, and have maybe 2 or 3 boxes with you to say, okay, I don't need this anymore, it's trash. I don't need this anymore, it's donation. Oh, I do need this, I've got to file it, or I've got to put it in the kitchen, or whatever. At the end of your 15 minutes, just clean up what you've done. And then start again, the next day or day after, do another 15 minutes. If it has taken you 2 years to collect the stuff in those bins, it's not going to be a 2-hour process to get to go through the bins, because again, for 2 years, those have been maybes to you, and you've put off making those decisions. But your whole goal is, if it's important enough to you, you need to find a home for the item.
Great. Thank you so much. You really hit a home run on that one. I gave you a ringer question at the end. So for those of you who have requested or put in your shopping cart for the private session with Janet, you should have received information about how to set that up. And if you didn't see it, don't worry. It's going to come out again on Friday the 28th. You'll get the recording of this session, as well as all the follow-up information, including the way to schedule the appointment, and also the fantastic e-booklet that Janet and other colleagues have put together to help you get and stay organized. So for those of you joining us for the first time here at Most Powerful Life, I just want to let you know that MPL, Most Powerful Life, through its programs and endeavors, is dedicated to the awakening of the human spirit and to the realization of the unique and varied dreams, adventures, and missions of all of its guests and members. I want to thank you all very much for being here today, and a big thank you to Janet, who has just really rocked our world with so much organizing value. And I'll look forward to connecting with you all soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.